He stared at the blinking cursor on his screen. The interview had been scheduled for months, but until this moment, he didn't know what he was going to say. How could you explain silence? How do you confess to a moment that lasted only seconds, but changed everything? This wasn't just any interview. This was the one where he'd finally answer the question everyone had been asking for years, especially one person. Can Yaman had been silent for a long time. Too long. But now, for reasons he still couldn't fully explain even to himself, he was ready to tell the truth about the call he never returned. And everything that call represented. To truly understand what that missed call meant, we need to go back, not just to the night he didn't answer, but to the story that led up to it. It wasn't just a relationship. It wasn't just a romance between two celebrities. It was something else. Something that left scars. Something that, despite everything, still lingered in the background of every role he took, every interview he gave, every night he closed his eyes. Because no matter how much success he achieved, or how far he traveled, or how many countries screamed his name, there was always that one night. And that one call. Demet had been waiting. It wasn't the first time she had waited for him. But that night felt different. She didn't know why, it just did. She had been rehearsing what she would say. Not because she wanted to hurt him. Not even because she needed an apology. But because she needed closure. So she called him. Not to beg. Not to cry. Just to talk. To hear his voice. To maybe, just maybe, get a piece of herself back. But the phone rang. And rang. And then, silence. No answer. No call back. Not that night. Not the next day. Not ever. Until now. Years passed. The world kept spinning. Can became an international name. Italy, Spain, Germany, Brazil, wherever he went, cameras followed. But the spotlight didn't erase memory. It didn't erase regret. He had tried. He had tried pretending he didn't see her name flash on the screen that night. He had told himself it was better this way. That nothing good could come from reopening a wound both of them had tried so hard to close. But in truth, he froze. He saw her name and he froze. Because what do you do when you're the one who broke something you secretly hoped would never be broken? What do you say to the woman whose tears you once dried, but also caused? He let it ring out. And then, in a moment of quiet cowardice, he put the phone on silent. He told himself he'd call back later. He never did. In the interview, the room was still. Even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. I saw her name, he said finally, his voice low. And I didn't pick up. The silence that followed wasn't just on set, it was inside him too. I wish I could say I was busy. That I was on a plane. That I didn't hear it. But the truth is, I was scared. He paused. I was scared of what she'd say. I was scared that hearing her voice again would break me. And for the first time in years, Can Yaman admitted something not even his closest friends knew. That call was my chance to make things right. And I failed. Demet never spoke about it publicly. But those close to her knew something had changed after that night. She kept working. Smiling. Moving forward. But there was a light that dimmed. A quiet she never explained. What people saw was a rising star. What they didn't see was a heart still waiting for an answer it never got. And maybe she never would have gotten one, until now. Can's confession didn't come with drama. There were no tears, no breaking down. Just words. Simple. Honest. Heavy. I think about that night more than I care to admit, he said. And if I could go back, I would answer. I would listen. I would show up. But time doesn't offer second chances so easily. And some doors, once closed, don't open again. Still, something shifted when he spoke. Something inside him, and maybe, somewhere far away, something inside her too. What makes this story so painful isn't the phone call itself. It's everything behind it. The laughter they shared on set when no one else was around. The glances during interviews. The way her hand found his in crowded rooms when no one was looking. The plans whispered in the quiet of their own little world, weekends away, places they'd travel, a life they thought they might build. And then, nothing. The press speculated. Fans gossiped. But they both remained silent. Until this interview. Until now. Can didn't go into details about the relationship. He didn't need to. Sometimes, the weight of what's not said is heavier than words. But he did say this. She deserved better than silence. And perhaps, in that sentence alone, he said everything. After the interview aired, the reaction was immediate. Messages flooded in. Some criticized him for speaking so late. Others praised him for his honesty. But what mattered most was the silence it broke. Demet never responded. Not publicly. But maybe, in her own quiet way, she heard what he said. And maybe it gave her peace. Some stories don't need a happy ending to be meaningful. Sometimes the most powerful love stories are the ones that never fully unfolded. Sometimes the love that doesn't last is the one we remember most, because of what it could have been. And sometimes, one missed call echoes louder than any "I love you" ever spoken. So what is the truth about the call Can Yaman never returned? It's that he regrets it. It's that he froze. It's that he still thinks about it. And it's that, in a life filled with lights, cameras, and noise, that one silent moment still follows him. Because the calls we don't answer, the people we let down, the words we never say, they don't just disappear. They live inside us. And if you're lucky, if life is kind, maybe one day you get a chance to tell the truth. Even if it's years too late. Even if the person on the other end of that truth no longer waits for it. Even if the silence has already built walls too high to climb. Still, that truth lives in you, pressing against your chest like a weight you never asked to carry. And when the moment finally comes, you don't just speak. You release something that's been burning quietly inside for far too long. And that's what Can Yaman finally did. He spoke. Not to erase the past, because some things cannot be undone. Not to rewrite the story, because what was lost will remain lost. But simply, to be honest. To acknowledge the pain he had caused, not just to her, but to himself. Because for all the fame, the fortune, the flashing lights, he was still the man who didn't answer the call. He was still the man who chose silence when his voice was needed most. And he never forgot that. He told the truth. About the call he never returned. The one that could have rewritten their entire story. The one she made not out of weakness, but out of strength, out of the hope that maybe, just maybe, something good could be saved. And instead of reaching back, he ran. From her voice. From his feelings. From the very thing he later realized he had been searching for all along. He told the truth about the heart he didn't know how to hold. Because love isn't just about feeling deeply. It's about showing up when it matters. And when it mattered most, he didn't. He wasn't ready. He wasn't brave. And sometimes, the hardest truth to admit is that you didn't know how to love someone who deserved everything. He told the truth about the silence he wishes he had filled. Because silence can be louder than any scream. It echoes through memories, through time, through sleepless nights and unfinished sentences. And in his silence, he left her alone with questions, with doubts, with pain. Pain he could have softened with just a few words. But he said nothing. And that nothing became everything. Sometimes, closure doesn't come from a reunion. Not from rekindled love, or second chances, or dramatic scenes in the rain. Sometimes closure is quieter. It's a sentence finally spoken. A confession laid bare. A moment of clarity in the middle of a long, confusing storm. And in that moment, Can Yaman gave the world, and perhaps Demet Özdemir, something far more honest than any apology. Because apologies can be rehearsed. They can be shaped to save face, to rebuild image. But truth comes raw. Truth comes trembling. Truth comes too late, but still right on time for the soul. He gave them the truth. Not to heal what was broken, but to say, yes, I broke it. Not to erase what happened, but to finally face it. And that truth, heavy as it is sometimes the only thing we have left to give.